This is Revolution Time, Episode 2, recorded March 13, 2014. So down on Exposition Boulevard. Hello and welcome to Revolution Time. I'm Taylor Cash.
I'm Nathan Roth.
And this is the show where we discuss and analyze Revolution from its episodes, to its characters, to its moral implications, to its threads, to basically everything. And tonight we're going to be talking about the long street known as Exposition Boulevard, which is pretty long and pretty self-referential, as if they're breaking the fourth wall.
Exactly. This is episode 17 of season 2, and it's quite a good episode in my opinion.
How so?
Well, as we see, the ratings are going up, even if just slightly, meaning the people are watching it, they're tuning in. Now, I don't want to toot our own horn, but I think this might be because of our podcast.
Yup, we're saving Revolution one episode at a time. For those of you watching, keep on doing the third word.
Save Revolution.
Yeah, # save Revolution.
Yep.
So let's go to our first segment, which is the Nazism. And in your notes, you've made a lot of comparisons between the Patriots and the Nazis.
Yep. So during the episode, I was watching it with my brother, and he pointed out that the cadets that had gone through the re-education program reminded him a lot of the idea of Hitler Youth, which made me to think about all of the different comparisons and contrast. This led me to contrast between the Nazis and the Patriots. For example, like my brother had said, the Hitler Youth, and the Patriot cadets that volunteered, apparently, they were so entranced by the charisma of the people, of the leaders, that they volunteered themselves to be part of this patriotism.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Nazi children who would report on their parents for not being Nazis, you know? The young minds are so influential and so programmable that the reason that the Nazis were so successful in the first place was because of their youth.
And as we see in the book and the movie based on the book known as The Wave, that anybody could be brainwashed theoretically.
Yep.
So I also feel that that it was very interesting. Another comparison was the way that the parent was. Another interesting comparison was how both the Patriots and the Nazis started off by weeding out the sickly and the weak.
Yes, which I thought was interesting. They weren't going for races at the time. They were going for those who were perceived as imperfect humanly, such as sickness, drunkenness, mental disability, all sorts of things, you know?
Anything.
I don't
Even
know.
Just the old and weak.
And I don't know why they have this idea of a perfect human where the body is muscular and structured and the face is pitch perfect and beautiful. But they do, and they just can't seem to accept that there's differences in the human mentality, not related to skin color and origin of the people where they were.
And I also feel like, just like you said, while the Nazis were mostly racist, the Patriots have not shown any signs of racism, but only anti-weakness, sort of.
Yeah.
It has been... In fact, we have seen them working with people of all races and all different forms of life.
Yeah, I remember that Nora was from South America.
Yeah. And as we saw, they had no problem with her. They liked her. She was one of their leaders. And one of her friends was an African American. And one of Rachel's friends that was apparently part of the Patriots was also African American. Meaning that the Patriots are not, at least not showing any racism.
Yep, that's true. So at least they're not much like the Nazis.
Exactly.
I know, but think about this. Think about
Yeah.
this. In the flashbacks, read that descriptions of how they perceive this as the survival of the fittest, meaning that the strong must survive and the weak must perish. You know?
Yeah.
And to see them destroy their own society, their own population so cruelly is just morally wrong. But it's understandable mainly because we're living in a new era of without power, without rules, without any sort of moral guidelines, you know? They may believe that the strongest of the person will survive. Therefore, they have to kill off the weak, even though they're just people like us, you know?
Exactly.
Kill the
And I also noticed that since you bring up the flashback, so as we see, Truman back then was extremely racist, as he called the prisoners that he was serving in Guantanamo Bay sand rats.
Yeah.
Plus,
there was the fact that he was considering the food as important because they were the people, they were the prisoners. Apparently, prisoners have no rights regardless of what race they were. And then that's a morally subjective, toxic societal subject there.
But a part of me agrees with him that if everything is theirs, there's no government, there's no rules, there's no power, as he even realized, it's not just that there's no electricity, there's no power, not even the batteries work, not even the flashlight, not even something that works by crank, like by physically rotating it. And so he basically was saying, in times like these, morals get thrown out the window. If it's them or us, I choose us. They are in here because they were bad, they were evil, they killed people, that's why they are now in prison. We are here keeping out for them, and if it comes to it where there's not enough food for everybody, why should they get food and instead of us, honest, good people?
Exactly. It's us versus them. The mentality that has lasted for a long, long time.
Yes. Next, I wanted to mention another comparison that I had reached between the Nazis and the Patriots, which is while they are doing these horrible acts, they are still keeping their composure. They are menacing by how calm they are. They're not maniacal and laughing. They're not insanely appearing. They are doing it as if it's just another day at work.
Yeah, an interesting comparison. And the fact that they don't care if the youth's mind is being corrupted by the fact that sheer power rules over everything, that there's such things as morals, you know? All there is just survival of the fittest, us versus them. We need to dominate everything we possibly can. We're worse than the militia.
Yes. But something that I realized that is very interesting is that while they both were very calculating and smart in their actions, even though they were horrible actions, they calculated and acted intelligently by waiting out or by keeping track, etc. However, something that I noticed is a big and interesting difference is how the Nazis would keep their work life out of the house. But as we saw, the president was letting his what seemed to be 8-year-old son be in the room as he was talking about these horrible torture and things that he is doing to kids only a few years older than him.
Yeah, and I have to say this. They probably want the kids to, understand what was going on in order to, pass down the knowledge. Yeah, pass down the knowledge so that they can continue it.
And another thing that I found very interesting while watching regarding the way it was filmed is that while the president was giving over this frightening speech monologue, the camera was focused on him. His son was out of the frame, which made me temporarily forget that his son was in the room. And then how they just brought it back and showed that the son is right there, still coloring, and the father is patting the son on the back, rubbing his hair. Basically shows us that he's simultaneously a monster and a nurturing, caring father.
Okay.
Which I felt was an interesting choice regarding the cinematography.
It's a very interesting choice, mainly because we get to see the fact that the two lives, the caring father that we usually get to see in the presidential lives, and the evil, ruthless dictator of which we get to see in the entire time of the Nazism.
Yes.
So let's move on to the next segment, which is brainwashing.
Now, I found this segment very interesting. The idea that these numbers were implanted or tattooed, on the inside of the cadets. I found it very interesting that the Patriots chose to tattoo numbers that turned out to be a deadly activation code on the inside of the cadets' eyelids. I felt that they figured no one would ever think to look there, and they were mostly right.
Yep, because how else can you activate them? A signal? An image?
A statement.
Code is unique, the code is specific, and the code can't be confused for anything. So basically, there would be no false alarms anywhere that they go.
And it's not too small of a number that it would be used in casual conversation. Let's say if someone would potentially be the first one and his number would be just 1. So anytime anybody would say 1, even if they don't mean the number, but just the, let's say, as in winning, or the person would be set off. So it was very calculating of them to make it in so many digits.
True.
So how else would they be noticed?
Exactly.
You need some sort of way to activate them. And in this situation, it's by hearing a voice command of some sort, which was each person's unique number that was tattooed on the inside of their eye.
And inside of their eyelids. Yeah, I get that.
I also feel like it was fascinating, the idea that they can mention it all they want as long as they don't say the actual sequence, just like we saw with the second boy. They were telling him, no, don't say what number it is, it will set him off. He's fully aware of what's going on, and he realizes this. And so they're talking about this code, and it doesn't set him off. Only the actual code itself can set him off, which makes you think how much programming and brainwashing had been put into them to set that up.
You know, it's amazing how big the human brain is, how many actions it can do, and we're not even aware of many of those actions because, let's face it, our consciousness can only be aware of so many things.
Yes, and to that point, it's also interesting that the Patriots added a fail-safe mechanism.
Yep.
Just in case they get compromised. As we saw with, I think her name was Kim, she first shot whoever was closest. It happened to be her dad. She didn't even realize she had just killed her father. then the next closest and most threatening was Gene, an old man, but he was threatening for the only reason of he started walking towards her. She tried to shoot him, saw that she couldn't use, that there were no more bullets, and so she took, not even a knife, just a sharp object that was lying around, and slit her throat.
Yeah.
To keep her safe.
How else were they able to, like, prevent Adele from, like, being realized that she is compromised, even with everybody around her? She was compromised.
Exactly. Though often in TV and movies, if someone is compromised and they hold sensitive information, and their goal is at that point to commit suicide, they never commit suicide in such a rough way. They almost always just take a quick poison.
Yeah, which is the most common thing in TV. It's trick, it's efficient, it's easy, it's palatable. It's all those things all in one. And then I'd like to continue from my previous point that I was trying to make before, that the human mind can do a lot of things. The consciousness only prevents us from going so far. Therefore, things like hypnotists exist in order to enter those minds. You know, they have to hypnotize, they have to program, they have to signal, they have to enter the subconscious and make it the most important part there is.
Yes. Just like we saw last week with the nanites entering Aaron's subconscious.
Yeah, he even had a theory on the previous episode about how the nanites had controlled the Patriots, or if they were together.
And this could theoretically support that theory, because as good a hypnotist as someone can be, they are not going to manage to program a person perfectly.
Yep. Yes, there are certain flaws that come from programming in an era without electricity.
Yes. I also found it very interesting the way that these re-education centers were. It seemed as if, on one hand, Kim remembered what had happened, but on the other hand, she had no memory. Which makes me think that during the re-education process, they removed certain memories from her mind.
That's true. If you're programming a brain, then you have to make it aware that the subconscious is doing these things, and that the consciousness that has no idea what's going on and cannot remember what is going on until it's too late.
Exactly. However, this also brings up psychological ideas. Freud came up with the theory that people have a conscious and a subconscious, and how to access the subconscious. And so it makes me think: are the Patriots using his theories? Are they expanding on them? Are they using them but with a lot more brute force?
Interesting point. And this brings up a lot of moralistic issues with the entire re-education thing. You know, you have the Patriots blindfolding kids, you have them going into rooms.
And these kids could theoretically be as young as 11.
Yeah, theoretically as young as 11. And then you have a lapse of memory.
I think Jason was the oldest, or one of the oldest kids there, and he's like 17 or 18.
Yep. One of the biggest lapse in memory, which could explain a lot of possible things, such as whipping, abuse, psychological disorders like flashing images, weird noises. Basically anything can influence the brain, and they're basically using every tactic in the book in order to do so.
And torturing.
Yeah,
it's awful.
We don't know what these tactics are, therefore we can't speculate on them further.
We know some of what it is from what Jason told us, and from what Julia told us. From when Julia was with Tom hiding from Jason after he had been re-educated, she explained to him what had happened with her son, and what they do there. Meaning that we have some sort of idea. We know for a fact that they have brainwashing, and that they have, they basically train the kids into submission and obedience, and that does include torture and beating, as we saw with her black eye.
Alex, and you have to take notice of the sheer purpose of this. You know.
Yes.
Everything is like indispensable towards the big picture, which is to take over the United States and prove their worth over all of the militias, the remaining militias that are out there.
Yes. Which, let's just wrap up which ones those are. From what I remember, there is California, the Plains Nation, the very little that might be left from Atlanta and from Monroe Republic.
Don't forget about the wasteland.
Oh, isn't that the plain? No, that also the wasteland, correct.
Yeah.
And Texas and possibly New Vegas. And then will they proceed to Mexico or to Canada?
Yep. It's all part of the plan. One last question. What do you think of the moral issue of using children in the army?
Well, I think that it is something that unfortunately has been around forever. Since the existence of military and battles, there have always been children participating, be it squires for knights in the Middle Ages, or like we said earlier, Hitler Youth, or like we're seeing here, the kids joining in. And it could theoretically be that you're having kids join in that are let's say under 10 years old. They, most of the time, if they're involved, it will be from the sidelines. It's not in the heat of the battle, but that does exist, unfortunately. However, since in this situation we're talking about only kids in their teens, because I do not recall ever seeing or hearing of someone that is under 10 years old in these re-education centers. So I feel like because of that, they are being put in the heat of the battle, in the front lines. Just like the president had said that he wants them to be ready within, he wants them to be ready within a month, and he wants to take over Texas within 2 months.
I thought they already signed a deal with Texas, giving them control of the country.
No, only Willoughby. And basically saying, we're just going to be leaving you alone. And so now what we're finding out, what they're really going to do is have these cadets take over in all of Texas by either killing or converting, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that they're using the young minds basically for this kind of stuff, because the young mind is innocent. The young mind is pure, and it hasn't been filled with experience. It hasn't been filled with thoughts. It can be done for anything that they want, and that's the main reason
therefore
why
it can be manipulated.
Yeah, and that's the main reason why children are so adored in today's society, is because they don't have any of the issues that we have. They don't have any of the experience that we have. They don't even have anything that we have. It's just they have their own thing, and until they grow up, until they gain that experience, it's theirs.
Exactly.
So let's move on to the new United States, which I know is going to be a very interesting topic subject.
Yes, and something very interesting. You brought this idea up already last week. You predicted this, that this is not actually the United States. It's not official. It's an internal few that took over.
Yeah, you know, one thing that was interestingly pointed out in the flashbacks was that they claim not to have done the blackout, even though the blackout itself was
I don't think they did the blackout.
Then who did?
That was the nanites from the code. But it could very well be that Randall was at this point not participating and working with the United States government, and only after the blackout he decided to make a deal with them. Just like we saw later on in season 1, how he tried to make a deal with Monroe.
Yep.
Because, as we know, Randall has very much distaste for war and for violence and for terrorism, since it took part of his family.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so if he knows that by blacking out the entire world, it could lower the wars and the terrorism even just a little, he's going to do it. And so now that it's done and the president is dead, and so now we get the chance for President Davis or then Secretary of Defense Davis to basically come up with a coup to try and overthrow, because I could be wrong, but from what I understood, until the president had died, there was no plan of his for a coup.
Basically, I think that the coup required the elimination of all of the modules, all of the methodology that they have right now, such as the internet and the Constitution of the United States, because they have those things, then the people can easily protest against anything to make the new United States into what they want it to be. And then this is what they state in the flashbacks themselves, you know?
Which, by the way, is similar to what we see in, be it the Arab Spring that happened a couple of years ago, or in, let's say, North Korea, or other dictatorships. When we see that, on the one hand, we have a situation where the people are protesting on the internet very vocally, be it on Twitter instantly, or YouTube, about all of the terrors and the injustices that are happening in their backyard, for example, in Egypt, while on the other hand of the spectrum, in North Korea, there is no internet. There is no free, open internet, and therefore the people cannot protest to the world without being in severe danger.
Yeah, that's true.
What happened in Egypt, even if they are in severe danger, at least the world has proof, and not just word of mouth.
Yep. It just goes to show about the terror technology and the ability to, make things like revolutions happen. But what happens when you take that away? What happens when you manage to, take away everything that you've already known and just start from scratch, you know?
But that also leads to think about, what about all of the younger generation? Charlie was only 4 at the time of the blackout, maybe 5. So, and she's currently 17 or 18. And so that makes me think that Danny, who was only 2 at the time, was 15, meaning that these 2 kids that were cadets in this episode had never seen or even been existing during the time of the internet.
Yeah.
They've never watched TV, they've never listened to music. And so if the Patriots are coming and saying, we are going to make things better, have ethics, morals, this is how everything will work, and there's no previous database such as the internet or movies or to show how such political propaganda could go so wrong so quickly, they decide to join because they are convinced, and they are supposed to be.
Yeah, and apparently they made an important part in the flashbacks about them waiting out the period so that they can kill about 70% of their population. In addition to the whole confusion, the whole lack of anything holding it down, the fact that they'd be able to unify the whole United States together, and they even take the slogan from the United States dollar bill that's underneath the pyramid, which is probably the origin for that Freemason logo inspired that was in this first half of the second season of Revolution.
Yes, the Freemasons.
Yeah.
Do you remember that line of theirs?
Yeah, I remember the line.
So I
Does
think
it look like this?
No, yes, I'm not talking about that. So it was very interesting as they took both the slogan and the pyramid with the eye inside of it of the Freemasons and used those as their signal, their statement, and their emblem.
Yep.
They made a new United States.
And that new United States is based on the hope that they can reunite them, that they can reunite all the states, that they can believe in what they want to believe. They mention things such as privacy and equality, such as the right to bear arms, the right for free speech, the right to not be braided in privacy, the right to be treated equally.
Yes. And also, I just thought of, since we know that the show takes parts of real life, in 2012, when the show started, Barack Obama was president. Joe Biden was vice president. So, according to this, does this mean to say that Barack Obama and the Secretary of State were on Air Force One and it crashed in the blackout and they both died, and now the number one person is Joe Biden and number two is this Secretary of Defense Davis? And so now when they're saying that they need to eliminate him, does that mean one can only hope we might get a cameo or even just a mention of his name?
And I don't know if that's going to be possible.
For legal issues?
No, because I think he died along with Barack Obama and the Air Force One.
Though, it's just very interesting how they bring in just subtle references to things that the younger generation does not understand. And I also feel like the Patriots, this new United States, when in the last scene of season 1, it's time, you see that they are in Guantanamo Bay and they're about to go to the United States. I thought, and for most of season 2, I still thought that is the president from when the blackout happened. But it turns out there was a coup. There's no connection to the president. He has his own insane morals, and he is wanting to wait out the issues and the problems of the newly found state, and so of the militias. He's wanting to wait it out as they all battle each other. And I also found it very interesting that he was in charge. He was going to take care of the stuff from the outside while Randall was preparing stuff on the inside, which ultimately led up to him really nuking Georgia and Philadelphia, which turns out to be part of the plan all along. The president knew that they could not return with the two most powerful militias, still standing strong. So he needed someone from the inside to them.
I hear you. And this kind of statement is evident of the kind of stuff that true politicians believe, the vision of a real America, what they think of America as they see it.
And as we saw when during this speech, Truman was very happy about all of this. and I find it very interesting to then see how that whole flashback was triggered by the way that he was being treated, either by Tom in the beginning, where he basically told them, do you want to be remaining as the person that bends over every time that someone comes down from DC, which sparked the first flashback, and then the second flashback, which told us about the coup, which we saw which was sparked from when Doyle had basically screamed at him and told him that he may not even relieve himself. And so it's basically like it's showing us that he used to really love this guy Doyle. He used to believe in him. Which makes me think, are we being led to a situation where Truman eventually ditches the Patriots, or even just not ditches them, but just assassinates or has Doyle assassinated?
Yeah, I think that's heading in that direction, because when you have doubts about what they believe America is, and when they have doubts from the beginning, as in from the flashbacks when he was in Guantanamo Bay and he was listening to the rousing speech, then it definitely says something about the faith, faith in general.
Yes. Though I have a question. Doyle was promoted because of what Tom did back in DC by killing Doyle's boss. But who is Roger? Roger is the guy that was basically told that if the cadets aren't ready within a month, the president will personally shoot Roger and his entire family. So who outranks who, Doyle or Roger?
I think Roger.
Okay. So I find that very interesting. That back in the flashback, we saw that Truman and Roger were getting along. They were talking, but neither of them really cared that much for Doyle.
Okay. And apparently so. Because Doyle is just low ranking on a platform. And then right now, the lower rating you are, the less you believe in the American system as they see it.
Which, by the way, wasn't Tom's original goal this season to work his way up from the very bottom of, which was the serving the stew to the soldiers in the camp, in the refugee camp, serving them soup, and then being promoted to security officer, and promoted and promoted and promoted by doing very shady stuff, be it causing his superior officer to overdose on, I think it was heroin, and later on to poison, and when that didn't work, to strangle to death Doyle's boss. And he's basically prepared to do anything it takes to go higher up.
Yep. That's just an example of how the system works. You assassinate, you manipulate until you're down on the top.
And like, if you manage to get to an agreement with someone, you just manipulate. But if they're completely not cooperational, you just have someone assassinate them.
That's true.
Which we saw is how Davis had become president.
Exactly. It's a twisted world out there. I don't know. We're out of time for this segment, but we're moving on to the next segment, which is the interactions between characters.
This I found very interesting this week. Personally, I love the banter back and forth between Monroe and Sebastian more than any other two people on this show. I read from someone on Reddit that said that they are each constantly trying to outdo one another's one-liners.
Yeah, and we don't get that in this episode. All we get is just
in this episode, instead of one-liners, we get a lot more strong dialogue and heart-to-heart conversations between the two of them.
Yeah, mainly about hope, being similar to someone, having a clear goal, and understanding.
Yes, but before we get to that part, I thought it would be interesting to mention another visually interesting scene. When we see Tom and Sebastian fight, and then we notice that Jason and Connor are fighting. Connor being Monroe's kid. It's constantly switching back and forth between the two scenes, and so we see that at one point, for the most of it, Sebastian Monroe is brutally beating Tom Neville, but on the other side, we see that Jason Neville is brutally beating Connor Monroe, which is very interesting. And I also saw that when Connor saw that his father was not doing too well, he was being held at gunpoint, Connor ran to go and help him, but was stopped by Jason. Then we saw that when Monroe had already dealt with Tom and noticed that Jason was beating his son Connor, he rushed over to save him, which he succeeded, which is very interesting because we don't get that father-son dynamic of love between Tom and Jason. In fact, I think that between the two of them, if we get any father-son dynamic, it's of hate.
Yep. And it just goes to show that Neville, that the relationship between Neville and his son is strained. But the fighting scenes are mostly there just because Revolution needs a fighting scene every now and then to like.
But I like how they had cut back and forth between the two.
Yeah, it kind of to give a parallel. I'm looking through my notes here, and I see that most of it is about the stuff relating to the tits, his own ambitions. I had that. I don't know what's her name. Rachel was moping about the loss of Danny, the decision to make the nanites smart.
I found that she was just really out of line. When she keeps holding a grudge against Monroe, she should not be. She should be holding a grudge against Tom. Monroe did not give the final order to have Danny killed, but rather the person that gave the order to have Danny killed was Tom. Another thing that Tom did to her family, Tom is the one that ordered her husband be killed in the first episode. But she holds a grudge against Monroe, who ultimately has done a lot more good than bad to her directly.
And then when we see stuff about Monroe trying to convince Miles to win, because let's face it, this is a war they're trying to fight, and I don't know how they're going to exactly win this.
Just like Miles had told Rachel, this is war. There is no right thing.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to explain, because basically Rachel was being fooled doing the smart decision by trying to do what he thought was right, when in actuality she wanted to do the dumb decision, which was basically just
what her heart told her to do.
Yeah, let her heart tell her what to do. Yeah.
I also found it very interesting how Miles, apparently, seemingly for the first time, was the middle ground between anybody. On the one hand, we have Charlie and Monroe being more brutal and realistic, and on the other hand, we have Jean and Rachel, which are being more compassionate and naive, and then we have right before everything is about to explode, we get Miles to stop it and fix it.
Okay.
Also, I felt it was very interesting how Miles was being put in his place by both Monroe at one point and Rachel at another point, of being asked, "What do you actually want?" Like, Monroe wants Miles to join him and rebuild the Monroe Republic, but this time with Connor as well. And Monroe claims that he knows the real Miles as someone who's brutal and calculating and intelligent and a leader. And Rachel is saying that she knows Miles, and she knows that he's a good person who's compassionate and caring and a family person. And she wants him to be with her and just save the town, and that's it.
Exactly. Which provides two sides of the coin. There's still the side of Neville that knows how to fight, that knows how to do nasty stuff, and is not moralistic. Well, you have the other side, which is Miles helping out people, Miles doing his best to defeat the Patriots, and it basically shows the ultimate dilemma. He has done bad stuff, as shown in season 1, and I don't know why they doesn't focus on that, but it certainly gives
because he didn't know him then.
It certainly gives credence to the actions that he's trying to do, that he's trying to redeem himself by trying to defeat the Patriots.
Yes. Though also I felt it was very interesting to see that on the one hand we have Monroe pulling Miles in his direction, and he is saying, I want us to not only kick out these Patriots, but also rebuild our republic, and together as brothers. While Rachel is pulling him in the other direction, saying, I want us to get revenge. Now, I'm not saying that either is correct, but I mean that either is the right thing and the good thing to do, but I'm saying that at least Monroe has an end game.
Yep.
Rachel's idea is, okay, we get revenge, then what? What now?
Yeah, basically Monroe is ultimately power hungry, even in the past. Though I don't know whether it's from corruption, whether it's from trying to do what's best after seeing someone that injured in season 1. I just don't know.
Miles is also showing that he does have a complex. And in my opinion, he is one of the best actors on the show currently.
True.
And by the way, I also felt it was very interesting, the dynamics that we saw with Rachel, Jean, and Charlie. Charlie was basically understanding that. Charlie was basically understanding. One moment, you can edit that.
Yeah.
First of all, as how we saw that Monroe was basically telling Charlie that he's not happy that she's being with a Monroe. And then after that, we also get to find out that that Jean is immediately able to tell that Charlie and Connor are in a relationship.
Yeah.
Rachel does not believe him, to which she says, and I found this very interesting, you grew up in my house. I know this kind of stuff. And so then I also liked it how Rachel, after that talk with her father, was noticing things that to the audience was made very noticeable, but to just the normal person who's just in the area would not notice in a million years, which is Charlie just checking out Connor.
Yeah. The relationship is interesting because these are two bad guys, bad girls. They're built for each other. They sort of have a thing for each other, but none of them not knowing they're in a relationship, mainly because they're trying to use each other to their best advantage.
Who? Connor and
Donna
Charlie?
and Charlie, yeah.
But I actually got a different vibe. I felt that when we were first hearing about the relationship, it seemed purely physical, purely because of lack of anything else to do. Just because, like Charlie said, because I know that I might just die today. And so I feel like, and I could have been incorrect, but I got the feeling that over time she is starting to get actual feelings for him.
Okay? Actual feelings, Miles being his deceptive self, or Miles being his fun self, Monroe having ulterior motives, Charlie, some Rachel and
Jean.
Some I don't know, some Rachel, Jean, and Charlie interaction, and you have character interaction in Exposition Boulevard.
Yep. And I felt that, unlike last week's episode, which was mostly centered around Aaron, it was very interesting how much character development everybody got in this episode.
Okay.
People often complain about this show that the characters aren't getting developed enough, and I felt that they are slowly fixing it.
Yep.
Another point which I cannot believe we missed is the idea of what happened at the very end of the episode.
Is when Priscilla gets surrounded by nanites.
So, what do you think happened?
I don't know. And what I think is that since the Priscilla is leading Aaron on in the relationship, doing the filler scenes, and since Priscilla is like being surrounded by the nanites and being unified with the nanites, I think that Priscilla is ultimately a byproduct of the nanites.
Someone had said on Reddit that perhaps Priscilla's heart, mind, body, host, whatever, of the nanotech. We might find out later that if Aaron would end up killing her, he kills the nanotech. The thing that he wants dead the most and the person he wants alive the most will become one. I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think that if they go that way, it will be very interesting.
Truly interesting indeed. Essentially, since Priscilla has been complaining about seeing her grandfather, having her family been dreaming away, having her ultimately feel like nothing's happening, not believing that the nanites have died, and it suddenly seems like there's a 180 twist, you know? It's sort of like, it's similar to David, who are also being controlled by the nanites.
Yes.
Peter, I mean.
Yes. Another thing that I just saw on Reddit is someone had posted that they think that the episode could have been a lot more powerful if Miles would have pulled the trigger on that kid. To which someone else replied that it would be very interesting for the story if later on either the kid will be involved in something big that gets some of Miles's group killed and Rachel will be wishing she had let him shoot the kid, or the kid will do something big to save Miles or really hurt the Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know. It could go either way, 50-50.
Yeah, and so the original guy that posted said that what if the kid ends up killing Rachel, which would end up sending Miles over the edge and going full Monroe. Yeah.
That's an interesting theory.
Okay.
And you got your video back, yay!
Yes. I finished on Reddit.
So we done an interesting theory on the Ted being either a supportive role or a negative role. We got Priscilla being under control of the nanites, and I think that's about it for the speculation part.
Yes. So, how good do you think this episode was on a scale of 1 to 10?
4.
I think a 7. But that's why this show works, because you have your opinions and I have mine.
Yeah, that's why this show works, Joe. We're just two guys talking about revolution.
Yes.
And that's...
Oh.
Do you have anything else to add before we close out the podcast?
Yes. What did you think about the promo? I have not seen the promo yet, but you said you had.
We're out of time. We're out of time for the promo. We're out of time. We're out of time.
Okay. And
that's going to do it for this Revolution Talk. If you have any emails, comments, theories, questions, email them to revolutiontalk@calebharris.com. Until next time, I'm Caleb Harris.
I'm Nachshon Roth.
And we'll see you next time on Revolution Talk, or Why We Fight. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.